Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell, mom of 18 and executive director of the Doula Co-op of Nevada. With more than 15 years in birth work, I've had the privilege of walking beside families through life's transitions. My work centers on connection, community, and amplifying voices that too often go unheard. Each of these episodes is an honest conversation about the messy, beautiful, and transformative experiences that shape us as parents and as people. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the incredible guests who show up with courage and authenticity to share their stories with us. Let's dive right in. Welcome to Becoming Parents. Today I have with me Ryan Johnson. Ryan, how are you?
Super good, Jennifer. Thanks for having me on.
I'm really excited. This is, I love this segue. I want you to jump in and start sharing your parenting journey.
Absolutely. I have two beautiful young children, one who's going to turn 3 next week, and then another one who's over 1. We just found out our third is on the way soon, which is very exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so we'll have to, I've had parties who say 2 to 3 is horrible, and others who say, oh, 2 is much worse. So I'm kind of preparing for the worst of it. But all that to say, my journey to parenting was pretty unexpected. One of the biggest and hardest parts of my engagement was I always wanted a big family and my wife didn't want kids. And it was like this moment of, well, where's the going to give here? And I just kind of was like, I love her so much. I'm willing to give up my own hopes and dreams for that. My wife was also just kind of like, well, we'll see how things go. And what really was the strike for her was infertility. Now, she didn't ever have that, but she's surrounded by friends who were dealing with their own issues to get pregnant, some taking years, some having several miscarriages. And she kind of started to realize that the longer she waits, the more challenging it can be at times. And so she was afraid that if she changed her mind down the road, that it wouldn't be just a matter of, oh, you decide to get pregnant and then you get pregnant, because that's kind of how a lot of people treat it.
Right.
So she's like, well, because I might be open to it down the road, we can start trying now. And it happened right away. So we're like, all right, well, guess we're on this journey of parenting. And then the craziest thing happened. We had our son, and she's like, being a mom is the most important thing that's ever happened to me. I am so happy about it. And doing this crazy shift. Now she's like, let's have 4 kids. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So that was my journey. And it's been fun because I'm like, I always want a lot of kids. And there's just kind of it's like a story, like a movie, like, I'll give up my dream so that I can be with you. And she's like, aha, that was a test. Now you can have your dream and me, so.
I mean, good for you, kind of, because there are deal breakers. My husband and I laugh about this all the time. The deal breakers. I'm like, how do you cut your sandwich? Like straight down the middle. I do it diagonally. Like, this is probably a deal breaker. So we joke about the deal breakers all the time, but genuinely, one person absolutely not wanting to have kids and one person wanting a big family, that could be a huge deal breaker. So for you to be like, actually, I could live without having kids, that's a massive concession, as well as her saying, you know what, let's try this out. That's a big so that's pretty huge. The good news is the way it happened with you guys, you both got what you want. You just didn't know it.
Yeah. Amen. I have this thing in my process with clients where I talk about goals being guesses, because we have this future idea of what we think we'll want down the road, and it tends to not be the case. Or more often, what we want shifts because our lives change. And so I kind of try to have that philosophy. Like, goals are helpful. They set the trajectory, but we don't have to hold on too loosely if over time we're like, you know what, I don't want that anymore. Or here's a new thing I want. So
because A to B is not like this straight line. It's kind of all over the place and up the mountain and over to a different state. And yeah, you're right. I think goal setting helps people keep focused to move forward. And so I love goals because of that. And shorter term obviously are different. But yeah, you have to have the flexibility to realize, like, that's not the thing. And your wife ended up wanting to stay home with. So like going from I don't think I want kids to I'm going to stay home with them and let's have 4. That's like a massive shift. So you guys had to navigate that in your relationship. Also, if she got pregnant that fast, like, that wasn't even fun. But
agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a sore subject for late night after a couple of drinks, and I'm like, oh man, woe is me. And what's crazy? It happened the same way the second time.
Yeah.
And then it didn't happen right away for our third here that's on the way. but then I did the second month. So I was like, hey, at least I got two times to try that time.
I mean, we've all got to be good at something, right? So there you go. Uh, but that's crazy and great, and what a blessing. But you now have the three kids under four. You're gonna have three kids
Yeah.
under four, which is
Yeah.
the third was the hardest for me, by the way. But
Ah,
well, I think you can grab two kids with two hands, and you have like
good
two
point.
sides of your lap, and now you're outnumbered by the third one. And I just felt like I'm great, it's great, it's great. And then I was like, why did I think I was going to do this? And then the fourth one came a year later and I didn't care. Like it was
Yeah.
just, you just go through that initial get a system for how you do things. But your wife giving up work, that was never a point, that was no issue for you, no issue for her. That was a comfortable transition, because that can be a really tough transition for some families.
Yeah. And it's actually one that I help a lot of clients navigate pretty regularly. In there's a lot of fear, right? Because dropping an income is not a big deal. And in the modern landscape, it's like not an option for a lot of folks.
Yep.
Then you introduce childcare costs and all that kind of thing. So we did this thing for like probably the first 9 months after our son was born, where my wife returned to work. So she didn't immediately become a stay-at-home mom, but she returned to work. And when they're really small, you can kind of work from home and they're just sleeping and napping and chilling in the little chair, no big deal.
Yep.
But as he was like 4, 5, 6 months old, it was like, no, I can't get a dang thing done. I'm working from home, but really I'm getting like an hour of work done.
Yep.
Um, so that was kind of like the point where it's like, okay, well, we got to figure out what we're going to do here. And my wife at the time was making like $50,000 a year and working in human resources, and all the childcare around us was like 30 to $40,000 a year. And we're just like, no. And so for us, then it was just kind of like it would feel like we're losing out on, the $50,000 income, but in reality, so much of that would go to childcare costs anyway. Like
Right.
we're gonna have to make a lifestyle change. And my wife was ready to quit the day she went back to work. She was like, "This is
Oh,
dumb.
yeah.
Nothing I do is as meaningful as important as caring for and like have an influence over the trajectory of this soul that I now get to mother." So, and that was beautiful to me. I was not like, "What? You don't want to do that?" Like for me, it was like, "Oh, okay, I got to work harder. I want to make sure I can provide for a family." And there's also this reality of very young children, depending on what you want for your kids, where the 0 to 4, 0 to 5 time frame is very, very crucial, and also like a huge point where they need a lot of guidance. They're not going to school yet, and that tends to be a huge concern for a lot of clients when they're like, I can't not do this. We're both going to have to work. We have to pay for childcare, but now that's like $30,000, $40,000 going to
Mhm.
something that we're not able to save. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Are we ruining our lives here? And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, let's actually look at this 5, 10 year plan. Guess what happens in 5 years? Like, you either are going to save money by sending them to private school, or you're going to save all of the money by sending them to, public school, whatever is important to you. And they're like, yeah, it's a good point. You could save all of that, or even just like half of it, and like get some breathing room back in your life. It's
Right.
it's just trying to, have some perspective, because I think one of the fallacies I know I make, and I think we all tend to as humans, is take our current circumstance and just assume that's going to how it's going to be for the long haul.
Right.
So
Yeah.
saying, hey, guess what? This is actually okay, and this is normal, and it's like helping your family. Um,
Right.
I think I've seen like so many shoulders just kind of like slowly
Yep.
lower when they realize like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not ruining everything.
Well, and
So
we feel that way from the moment like you get pregnant, and then every decision you're making about what you eat, or just everything becomes a decision that's impacting someone else, this child.
yeah,
And it impacts your relationship, and you don't want to negatively impact either one of those things. And so
so true.
decisions seem monumental. Let's talk about what you do, because you're talking numbers and you're talking about,
Sure.
like I love that you pointed out that your wife made 50,000, and if 30 to 40 is going towards daycare, you're actually only making 10 to 20, let's like maybe 12 to 15 in all
Right, exactly.
reality. And then so like, oh, that's only like $1,000 a month.
Right.
Like I tend to reverse engineer things, and I'm guessing you tend to do that too. So I want to segue to that, because that's going to
Sure.
make a big difference moving forward in our conversation.
Yes, absolutely. I do tend to reverse engineer things. So much of kind of my process with clients, and just to kind of provide some context, I am a financial planner. I primarily serve, high end, high earning young families of incomes like 200 to $500,000 a year. But a lot of times, the introduction of a kid changes everything, and quite honestly, is a catalyst for a lot of reasons I start working with people. And just like you said, hey, this was really fun, when we were young and married and having no kids, double income, no kids, the dink lifestyle. But now, the decisions I make, even financially, have ramifications beyond just me. And
Yeah.
so sometimes it's questions around, hey, like I've got a client I've been working with. Last week we met and we went through 4 different scenarios. One, she stays home from work, she quits her job forever. What would need to change? What would be the trade-offs?
Right.
Right. And a lot of that was like, well, more modest vacations, perhaps less charitable giving. Um, he's going to have to retire in his late 60s instead of his early 60s, and we're taking a lot of assumptions into play here. And then, a couple of other scenarios were like, well, okay, well, what if you take 2 years off? Or what if you get a side gig while you're doing all these things? And it's amazing how trying to navigate, to your point, $1,000 a month, really just depends on how long you're trying to do things and what things you're willing to give up to make it happen.
Mhm.
And for me and my wife, we're like, it's so important to us that I provide this for my wife and for her to be like, I want to make it happen, that we are willing to give up, trips to Europe or, as regular vacations as we would like. Like now our vacation is hopping in a car, driving 8 hours to mother-in-law's, hanging out for a week, and then, coming back home and then hanging out with our,
Real cheap.
hanging out with my mom. So, um, and the reality is like, that's still a meaningful life. It just, it's just a trade-off. And so our kids
Yeah.
don't know any different. All they know is an existence where vacation is going to see someone they love and who loves them really well. And it's like, well, that sounds like a good experience. So,
I think it's not just a change in finances, it's a change in priority too.
oh,
Because the
absolutely.
priority might have been a vacation to the Bahamas or to Europe, or, taking 3 weeks and going somewhere out of country
Mhm.
or out of state where, or a higher end resort or insert
Yes.
thing here. Your priority shifted where it isn't even that you aren't able to do that. You could do that once a year. It's that that's
Sure.
not what you want to do anymore because
Right.
you're looking at this through a different lens. So I think when people are pregnant, trying to like plan this out, you have no idea how your life is going to change, how much it's going to change once that child is in your world,
Yes.
and that's going to continue to look different. And then, like you guys, adding a second and then adding a third, had she stayed at work, adding that second one would have made it like this is absolutely, it might have been worth it with the first child,
Right.
not when the second child comes. So like I love that you're talking about it does not look one way for a family. And a lot of it isn't even giving things up, it's shifting what's important to you. And when you
Oh,
shift
certainly.
what's important to you, you're not really giving anything up.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I think that was honestly a huge part of the reason why I launched my business too. Because when I think about my shifting in priorities, like I love my job. Like I get excited to go to work, but I also like will stay at home until 9 in the morning because I want to make my kids breakfast or leave at 4:30 or noon because I don't have any meetings. And guess what? I'm going to go be there when they wake up from nap time and take them to the mall or,
Right.
you name it. Or even like this past Monday, like my wife is in the thick of it. She's like 11 weeks pregnant right now and is just
Oh,
like exhausted. And
yeah.
so I just took the day off. I just took Monday off. I had to reschedule one meeting with, it wasn't the client, it was like a networking meeting. And the flexibility for me was so worth it. And like for me, it's like, okay, there's probably some reality that the business is going to quote unquote take a hurt, take a hit long term because I'm not planting seeds. I'm not working as hard as I could. But it's more important to me that I'm present with my kids in that in the season of life than that. So so be it.
So before kids, you did not own your own financial planning business.
Correct. I actually launched it like a year after my son was born. And I was just joking because last night I saw a friend of mine who also owns a financial planning business posting about all the stuff he's doing, working 60 hours a week, and they don't have kids. And I was like, oh man, it's amazing what I could do. What did I do with all my time before before I had kids? And so it's definitely a wild thing, but I also like wouldn't trade it. I don't think that, it's possible if I never did that, I would never have had the motivation or the values shift to make the change, to your point earlier. And so
Mhm.
we all have our own stories, and I'm just grateful that I get to be where I am today.
But I
So
love that because it wasn't just your wife making this pivotal shift. You also made a shift because the lens that you view the world has now changed and you want
yes,
to
absolutely.
change how you show up in it. How scary was it to start that a year after your baby was born and your wife's not working?
Oh, very scary. Yeah. So I did a lot of research on case studies of people who have launched their own firms and how like most people don't last 2 years. And like there's a pretty high correlation between just like surviving 3 years and having like amazing success. So it's pretty funny. I was like, I just got to get there. And honestly, my wife was not on board right away.
Okay.
I remember I was interviewing with another company, mowing my lawn, and I was kind of like, oh man, it'd be so great if they decided this wasn't a good fit, because then I could like go to my backup plan of launching my own business. And I was like, I just realized my backup plan is the thing I want to do. And I like stopped. The lawn was halfway mowed and I was dirty, and I like run inside and she's like, shh, he's sleeping. And I was like, oh, sorry. Hey, what if I quit my job and start my own business? And she like kind of stares at me. I'm like, it was not, I was actually like bummed about her response for a long time. I was like, I shared my heart with you and you weren't excited for me. But she sat there in silence for a few seconds and was like, okay, where does health insurance fit into this equation? So that was pretty funny. And so that was kind of the ongoing conversation. But all the research also shows that having a runway is what's most important. Runway being the kind of support system or cash on the side that you can um, rely on. And so I kind of ran the numbers and knew that I was going to basically burn through all my life savings. um, but here I am 2 years in, and the business has survived, so it was worth it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of starting over again, but I just think the trajectory looks a little different than it did when I was an employee, because I have an ability now to
Yeah.
grow my business way more than just a 3% raise every year. You know what I mean? So
Yes. So on the
the
flip side,
Yeah. And so
yeah.
there's definitely like, it's like, my trajectory is one line, and then the new one is like take a dip down, but then have it be a little bit more aggressive. And so
Yeah.
there's going to be a crossing point where, you know, Lord willing, sooner rather than later, maybe a year from now, where we're kind of back where we was before. And then the pace and the trajectory is even better than it was before. And so
Right.
I just didn't want to be like, take the safe path and then wonder for the longest time. Cause I was kind of like, hey, best case scenario, even if it fails, I knew that I gave it a shot, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of people who would hire me right now because, surprise, there's ironically not as many financial planners as you think, even though there's a lot of them on every street corner. Um, they're all aging out. The average age is like 57, and fewer and fewer people are getting into the industry just because it's really hard
Mm.
and survival rates are really low. So it's really fascinating. But
So that's great. I
yeah,
I love that you can help people not only as a parent but starting your business, because earlier you said one thing that people can do if like the wife wants to stay home is a side gig.
yes,
And the side gig can end up becoming something big. But
oh yeah,
basically, when you're whittling down, like, okay, it's $1,000 a month. So we can either do these things so we don't need it, and you can do this thing that could produce that much money. And then there's really no gap at all. But you've done it yourself. So you've lived that after having kids, which is the
yeah.
scariest time to jump into a new business.
Oh, I agree. And I don't think I would have, to be fair, and not to say, I think I also have a leg up of having really, really tight knit, close family nearby. Um, but within an hour, my parents, my siblings, and I feel like we have like a social guardrail where if like worst came to worst and I like literally like had to go bankrupt, like I could probably live with family for a little bit, while I'm finding another job. And so that's not a reality that everyone gets to experience. So there's some privilege that I have in that circumstance. But at the same time, it was like, still a risk,
Yeah.
I'm still putting it all on the line either way. So, but it was fun. But even to your point, like I've got a client who started earlier this year where she had started a side gig when she was a nurse as like a holistic coach,
Mhm.
like mental, physical, spiritual well-being, and it took off. And now it's like their main source of income. And she's like did six figures and is like really excited about it. So it was like originally a thing where she could like slow down, and now she's like, never mind, I love this. And like her kids are aged out of like the elementary age now. But um to your point, it's like, yeah, maybe it's just a float by, or maybe there's like some potential there you didn't even realize. So it's really cool.
Which is really, I love the when you get to a point where there's friction, but like with having a baby, if you're pregnant, it's there's like that's not probably going to change, so you're still going to be pregnant. So it's a point of
Yes.
friction where you have to make some decisions. You're forced, like you're
Yes.
in a corner. This is our situation, our reality, or the baby's born, like we're not giving the baby back to go back to work so we can make more.
Right.
That's not on the table.
Yep.
And you're kind of in this corner. I think people become really um curious about what things they can do and willing to think outside of the box. And just I just think we get, I don't know, we get tricky. That's not the right
Yeah.
word exactly, but like we figure out how to make that work one way or the other, or even a couple things moved around. So I love that. I love that she's like, yeah, I'll do this thing and hopefully it will make money on the side and bridge the gap. And now it's their main source of income. Like that's fantastic. Because you really don't know, but there's so many ways you can do this. And I think when you are like, when you're in that corner, like, holy crap, we've got to figure this out. I was a single mom for a while and I worked two jobs. I cut hair. And so like I've always had my license and I would do it a couple nights and Saturdays. So it wasn't a lot, but I would do 2 or 3 nights and then a Saturday. And my kids actually came to me. They were all elementary school, junior high school ish. And they were like, we want you to quit your job. We used to have
Wow.
family meetings, right? And
Yeah.
I said, okay, because we want you home more. Like, what parent doesn't want to hear that? And I said, so if I stopped cutting hair on these 2 nights in the weekend, I would be home then. This is how much I bring in. I laid it out. This is how much I make doing that. This is what I pay for in our house. We would have to get, like, back then, like Dish Network cable was $120 a month. No more
Sure.
network for you guys, like,
Oh no.
right, like these are the things that I will no longer be able to, I will have to cancel them. You will not have them anymore. I'm working this hard to give you
Yeah.
guys this home and these things, and that's what
Mm.
this looks like. So if I'm going to give up that income, I have to put it back in the account. It's not coming from anywhere else. And they were like, give it up, we don't care. And so I canceled those things and I stopped working.
Mm.
Like 12 years ago I stopped doing hair. So I think
Yeah.
like it's a constant adjustment too.
Yeah.
Constant adjustment. You just, you don't know what life is going to throw at you, or the fact that like in that situation, I as the parent was trying to provide a life I thought my kids wanted, and in actuality they wanted to give up some things in that life to just have more time as a family.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they want is presence more than anything. And like if my job is taking them away, even if I'm physically there, but I'm mentally not,
Yep.
like I had a moment like that recently that was really convicting where I was with my son and we were playing with trains. And he said, "Hey dad, say wait." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, he realized I wasn't there present, but he wanted me." So I said, "Wait." And he's like, "Oh," so he pushed his train across like he wanted me to like tell him to stop pushing his train across. So he like gave me the cue as in like, "Hey dad, like can you say something to me here?"
Yeah.
And even to your point, I want to say that it's beautiful that your kids did that and recognized. And that's a really valuable thing. A lot of parents I'm noticing avoid financial conversations with their kids from like a heart of protection. Like, I don't want you to have to worry about this. I want to protect you and guard you from this. But I have conversations with every client where we talk about what money was like growing up.
Mm,
And I'd say like 4 out of 5 times they say my parents never talked about money.
right.
I wish they had. I had no idea what I was going to do when real life hit because I just wasn't even aware of all these different things. And so there's a reality that like, yeah, like sometimes um, making them aware that things are tight can put an unwanted anxiety on children. But at the same time, like the way that you approach it and the way that you're with them and
Mhm.
like caring for them and loving them is going to be the thing that makes the biggest impact. And I have this kind of perspective on finances that we're not solving for the most money. That might sound kind of strange, but if it was always about more money, we would never, ever consider staying home. We would never go on vacations. We would never do home remodels or upgrade our cars. We would pinch pennies. We'd eat, rice and beans and all these different things. What we're trying to solve for is the best life. I actually wrote a blog a few months ago, like, can I afford to stay home with the kids?
Mm.
And the conclusion I had is, yeah, but what if you love your life? Yes, you might have to give up all these things. Yes, you might have to go on more modest vacations for a short time, all that kind of stuff. But like, if this is what you want, like you can make it work. It's a values question. And again, not everyone has to do that. And I have a number of clients who had kids and they're like, yep, it wasn't even a temptation because they love their jobs. And that's wonderful. And the conversation was different. Okay, well, how do we make adjustments when childcare enters the picture? Um, but so much of like growing a healthy relationship with money starts with understanding your values. And then it's aligning where your money is going with it and the actions that you're taking. And when you start to do that, you're like, oh, I feel a lot better about this life that I'm living. So it's amazing how many people just don't take the time to understand what's important to them first.
Well, and again, that kind of goes hand in hand with the perception. Like you're not giving up vacations, you're changing what you want.
Yes, fair
It's
enough.
the
Yeah.
same thing. Like your values are huge in that. I remember
Yes.
like I wanted to always raise my kids in a home with a backyard and have dogs. And I did. I raised them in a home with a backyard. I didn't want to be in an apartment. That was
Yep.
a value for me based on my upbringing. You really have to dig into like, why is that? Why was that important to me? Right?
Hmm.
What
Yep.
what was it about that was important? And it was like feeling like you have your own place and you're grounded
Mhm.
and you're not
Yes.
interrupted. And I mean, that's not important to other people, but that was a value for me. And so I would think like people's values on what they want their life to look like long term are wildly different because that was a massive value for me. We're going to be in a house with our dogs in a backyard. Um, so
Beautiful.
my finances looked different because that was one of my values, part of my
Of
value
course.
system. Yeah. How easy is it for people when I'm guessing they have conversations with you where they come in like shoulders up to their ears, super stressed, feeling like they're failing, and then they walk out with a very different perspective.
Yeah. I think it really depends on what they're dealing with. So a lot of the clients that are attracted to kind of my process, a lot of times they have like 80% of it there. Like they feel like quote unquote they've got a lot going on. They're just overwhelmed by the fear of missing something or,
Mhm.
some gap or like, I can get by with YouTube for so long, but now that I have kids, like it's not worth the risk. I just want to work with a professional. And so I have noticed that the biggest thing that helps peace of mind from a financial perspective is two things. One, like, all of the kind of gaps have been filled because every time I work with clients, there's some kind of red flag thing. I haven't had a situation where I haven't done that. And a lot of times that's preparing for the unexpected.
Yeah.
So there are the five kind of financial foundations that I go through with clients. One of them is emergency fund. They have enough money saved for the unexpected expense or losing a job. Life insurance, if something happens to them, they know their family and their new child or kids are going to be protected. Disability coverage. So if they get hurt and they can't work, or more common nowadays, they get an illness like cancer, they can't work, they can still have income. Having an estate plan done, like having a guardianship, having the hard decision of who's going to watch your kids should the worst happen to you. And then lastly, just a liability coverage if someone like
Mhm.
is mowing your lawn and slips and breaks their legs and sues you or something. Um, protecting against the things you can't expect, those are like really, really helpful from a mental health perspective, because when you're 2 a.m. and your body's on high alert because it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're afraid someone's going to attack you, you think of all these crazy hypothetical situations.
Mhm.
Like, what if this happens? What would happen to us? And if you come back to like, oh, I actually been working with Ryan and he told us to do this. And so it's very rare that someone comes in and have all those boxes checked. So I help them work through like, what's the right amount for you? What's the right coverage? And it's not uncommon for someone to have like no emergency fund. And it's like, great, we're going to build over to that over the course of the next year. Really, you just have cash sitting there I'm not using. Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because like when nothing happens, that's great. But when something does, you're going to be so glad you did. And the second thing that adds to peace of mind is just having a plan or an idea of what you're going to do next. Like doing the best you can still creates uncertainty because you don't know. But if you work with someone who's like, hey, this is actually the best that you can do, and you're doing the best you can with what you have. Whoa, are you serious? That's amazing. Now, it might not be what you want, right? It might not be the trajectory that you had, and we're all going to wish we made more money and had more money in the bank. But all that we can do is make the best decisions we can with what's coming in right now. And if we have confidence that that's happening, those two pieces of the puzzle I found have been hugely important for people to understand and trust. And it's not an instant thing, Jennifer. It's not like we have one meeting and then they go. It tends to happen over the course of 6 months or so, or 12 months where it's like, okay, wow, there are a lot of things. It's going to take time to address these. And eventually they do. And a year later, you don't realize it, but you have peace of mind. You didn't wake up one moment. I have peace of mind now. It's like, I just realized I haven't thought about money in 3 months. That's an amazing feeling. That tends to be how it goes.
I think the trust for me, having a trust, like all those things, all those
Yes,
things
yes,
are
yes.
important. But like when I was a mom and we had the kids, we blended families 12 years ago and had kids and stuff together. The trust was the single biggest, most important. It was less important when I was married, although it shouldn't have been. But
Sure.
when I was in a blended family and I
Yes.
thought, oh my gosh, what do I, if something happens to you, Ryan, what
Yes.
do I need to do? What are the steps I need to do to make sure your kids are protected, taken care of, all of the things? And that was
Yes.
absolutely because my husband's wife had died. And
Mm,
so I was like, I don't know who to call. I don't have the legal ability. Like
right.
these kids are going to end up in foster care with
Mm,
someone who loves them. And that made me absolutely panic. And when we got our trust done a decade ago, I cannot even tell you how much peace. So that is a very real thing for people. And all of them are important. The estate planning, having the trust, the will, the whole
sure,
thing.
sure, sure.
But
Yep.
yeah, those are tough conversations. And I always think you're preparing for the worst so that you don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have
Exactly.
to stress about it anymore.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I tend, I can't step into making legal recommendations, but I can say,
Right.
hey, speak with an attorney about getting a trust because of all of these other reasons. Like the moment young kids enter the picture, especially because you have these investments and you have this life insurance. And
Right.
if you do both pass away and they go to live with your sister or your mom, if there isn't some sort of trust provision that has the money on their behalf, they'll just get it all when they turn 18, or 19, depending on the state you
Yeah.
live in. And it's like, I don't know about you, but I would have made some bad decisions without having
Yeah.
had parents when I have all this money. And so having some kind of insight to do that is so
Yeah.
important. So I tend to play more the role of accountability partner.
Yeah.
I actually had this happen recently where someone was like, hey, we finally did the estate plan with the attorney. Even though I didn't want to, I just got sick of you asking. And I was like, music to my ears. Uh,
Perfect. It doesn't
wonderful.
matter. It doesn't
Yes, exactly. Sounds like I'm doing my
Wait.
job, right? Yeah, you're right. It does feel good to have it done. So
Well,
that's what I do.
yeah, and that's the thing. Is there like a number one? You went over like the top five things that you talk to them about making sure that they have. Is there kind of a Are there a couple themes that these younger couples with young kids have when they come in to your
Oh
office?
yeah. Yeah, the biggest one is they say, "Oh, I'm covered on life insurance. I have something through my work." But they haven't run the numbers at all. A lot of times it's like $50,000, which don't get me wrong, that's like a good chunk
Right.
of change. But that's gone in 2 months or 3 months. Like, um, they don't realize two things, like A, how expensive it is to do things by yourself, um, or B, how you're going to respond to losing like your life partner
Right.
with kids present, you
Right.
know? And so a lot of people are like, oh no, it's fine, I'll just work. And it's like, maybe. Like, what if you get depressed and you get fired and you can't work because you are unable to emotionally, resolve? And I actually had a friend of mine, close friend, who lost his wife to breast cancer. They were in the early 30s. They have 3 young kids. There was life insurance on the equation, and he hated the money when she died because it represented her, and there's no amount of money that could replace his wife, right? But after a year of going through the grieving process, he was so glad it was there. It
Right.
allowed him to pay off his student loans. It allowed him to pay off the house. It even had a little bit of extra money. He's like, I'm not going to use this for me, but this can now be like money that can be invested for our daughters to go to college down the road. And again, he'd give it all up to have his wife back. But um, those are the kind of things where like they made the right decision before. And that's never going to happen to me. We're young, healthy people.
Right.
And
Right.
then all of a sudden, third pregnancy, she's diagnosed with breast cancer while she's pregnant. And it's like a huge life decision. And so she's not going to do chemotherapy while she's pregnant. So it's like, it was just wild to see them. I mean, heartbreaking to see them go through that. But um, that's the most chronic one to answer your question. Like most
Yeah.
people are chronically underinsured. Um, Majority of the time, even if you can get a lot, like let's say you can get $500,000 to your work, it tends to be a lot more expensive
Mhm.
relative to having your own policy. And like you leave that job, it's gone. And so like if you just keep hopping from job to job, rather than just owning your own policy, for the next 20 or 30 years, it tends to be a better decision that people should explore. That being said, that assumes you're healthy, like you still have to go through underwriting. If you have health conditions that would prevent you from getting covered, group policies can be great, but it is going to be really hard for you to get a lot of coverage if that's the case. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What piece of advice? Well, wait, no, you know how I want to end? I want to end by talking about your business, how people can find you. I have the link in the bio, and I
Oh, sure.
added
Thank
the
you.
blog, like the blog that you said, can I afford to stay home with the kids? I added that to the show notes because that's
Oh, thanks.
probably one of the number one questions. Um, so we have the link to your website, but what's the best way for people to contact you? And you're in Michigan, so where I'm in Nevada. So what do we do now?
Yeah, thank you so much for the time and the space to share. Um, yeah, I try to be pretty active on my website. I'm very active on LinkedIn, which is like a cheesy business mess. So if that's not your cup of tea, don't worry about it. Um, I serve clients all across the country. Um, and I don't currently have any clients in Nevada, but California, Colorado, Missouri, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Minnesota, Illinois, the list goes on and on. I don't have to do it, but I'm able to serve anyone virtually across the country. And the funny thing is, like some people are like, I don't want to work with someone virtually. I'd rather work with someone local. Um, Most of the time, you'd rather connect with that person over Zoom anyway. I've got a lot of local clients, and they're all like, well, I don't want to drive 20 minutes to come to your office and then drive 20 minutes home. I'd rather just like, oh, I call in from work and my wife can call in from her work and it's easy. And so it's been a great system for me. But yeah, again, my firm is called 100 Financial Planning. Um, I serve primarily hiring young families. Again, most of their income somewhere between 200 to $500,000 a year. Really, just in a place of life where they're sick of wondering if they're doing enough and just wish they had a plan to make the most of it. So,
Ryan, thank you
thank,
so much for being on and sharing. I appreciate you.
absolutely, Jennifer. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so. Thank you.